The tears rolling down Olivia Evans's face were as hot as the desert sun beating down on the dusty town of Silverado Creek. She pressed her back against the rough brick wall of the general store's alley, trying to make herself invisible to the prying eyes of the townsfolk, who had already spent the morning whispering about her failed attempt to teach at the local school. It was 1876, and a woman with grand ideas about education didn't sit well with the conservative folk of this Arizona Territory outpost. Olivia wiped her face with the sleeve of her once fine blue dress, now dusty from her hasty retreat from the schoolhouse. The school board meeting had been brutal. They had questioned her methods, her background, and worst of all, her capability as a single woman to instill proper values in their children. Too progressive, they had said, filling the children's heads with nonsense about women's rights and whatnot. The memory made fresh tears spring to her eyes. Olivia had sold nearly everything she owned back in Boston to make the journey west after her father's passing left her with nothing but debts. Teaching was all she knew, all she had ever wanted to do. Did you hear? The voice of Mabel Wilson, the banker's wife, carried from the street. That Eastern girl actually tried to argue with Reverend Phillips about allowing the Mexican children to attend classes with our own. Shameful, replied another voice that Olivia recognized as belonging to Harriet Simmons, the mayor's sister. I knew from the moment she stepped off that stagecoach in those fancy clothes that she'd be trouble. Too educated for her own good, if you ask me. Olivia bit her lip to stop a sob from escaping. She had thought Silverado Creek would be different. The advertisement in the Boston paper had promised a forward-thinking community seeking qualified educator. What they'd neglected to mention was that forward-thinking only extended as far as having a schoolhouse at all. The sound of spurred boots on hard-packed dirt made Olivia freeze. She hurriedly tried to make herself presentable, but there was no hiding the redness of her eyes or the state of her dress. "You all right, madam?" The voice was deep and soft, with a slight drawl that marked him as a local. Olivia looked up to see a tall man silhouetted against the bright midday sun. His broad shoulders were draped in a worn leather vest over a simple cotton shirt. A cowboy hat cast a shadow over his face, but she could see the concern in his eyes. "I'm perfectly fine, thank you," Olivia lied, straightening her back and trying to summon what dignity she had left. The man tilted his head slightly, taking her in. "Don't look fine to me," he said simply. He didn't move closer, respecting her space in a way that surprised her. "Name's Wade Armstrong. I run the cattle operation north of town." "Miss Olivia Evans," she replied automatically, years of proper Boston upbringing not allowing her to be rude despite her desire to be left alone. "I know who you are, Miss Evans. Whole town's talking about you." There was no judgment in his voice, just a statement of fact. Olivia flinched. "Then I'm sure you have an opinion on my unsuitability as well." Wade Armstrong removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair and a face weathered by years under the harsh western sun. He was older than she had initially thought, perhaps in his early 30s, with laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of a kindness not immediately apparent in his rugged appearance. "Actually," he said, "I was hoping you might consider teaching my ranch hands children. Most of them can't come to town for schooling, and some of the Mexican families working for me have young ones who need learning too." Olivia stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to teach? After what happened this morning?" "Especially after what happened this morning," Wade said with a slight smile. "This town can be set in its ways, but that don't make it right. Those children deserve an education, regardless of where they come from." For the first time that day, Olivia felt a flicker of hope. "The school board don't need to know," Wade interrupted. I've got an old bunkhouse we can fix up. It's not fancy, but it'll serve as a schoolroom well enough." Olivia hesitated, weighing her options. She had barely enough money for a stagecoach ticket back east, and nothing to return to even if she could afford it. "Why would you do this for me? You don't know me," she said suspiciously. Wade placed his hat back on his head. "Because everyone deserves a fair chance, Miss Evans. And because what I heard in that meeting room this morning told me you're exactly what those children need." He paused, looking down at her tear-stained face with a gentle expression. "You're enough, Miss Evans. Don't let anyone in this town tell you different." The simple words hit Olivia like a physical force. How long had it been since anyone had told her she was enough? Her father had always pushed for more education, more accomplishments, more refinement. And when he died, leaving her with nothing, she had felt like the biggest failure of all. I don't know what to say," Olivia admitted. "Say you'll think about it," Wade suggested. "I'm heading back to the ranch now, but I'll be in town again on Saturday for supplies. You can give me your answer then." With a tip of his hat, he turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing in the alley with a strange feeling blossoming in her chest. For the first time since arriving in Silverado Creek, she felt seen, truly seen. The boarding house where Olivia had taken a small room was quiet when she returned. Mrs. Jenkins, the widow who ran the establishment, gave her a sympathetic look as she passed through the parlor. "Heard about the school board meeting, dear," the older woman said. "Don't you fret about it. Those old goats wouldn't know progressive education if it bit them on their behinds." Olivia couldn't help but smile. Mrs. Jenkins had been kind to her since her arrival, one of the few friendly faces in town. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. I appreciate your support. That Wade Armstrong came looking for you earlier, Mrs." Jenkins mentioned casually, though her eyes twinkled with interest. "Fine man, that one. Owns the biggest spread north of here, the Double A Ranch. Employs half the town one way or another." "Yes, we spoke briefly," Olivia replied, not wanting to elaborate on their meeting in the alley. "Did he now?" Mrs. Jenkins smiled knowingly. "Well, there are worse acquaintances a young lady could make in these parts. He's a good man, despite what some might say." Olivia's curiosity was piqued. "What do some say?" Mrs. Jenkins waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, just nonsense. Some folks don't like that he employs Mexican families and treats them equal to white workers. Others don't approve of him refusing to join in when the vigilante types get riled up. He keeps to himself mostly, tends to his business." The information only increased Olivia's interest in the man who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. She excused herself and climbed the narrow stairs to her room, where she spent the evening considering his offer. By Saturday morning, Olivia had made her decision. She dressed carefully in her second-best dress, a modest green cotton that brought out the auburn highlights in her chestnut hair. She pinned her hair up neatly and added her mother's cameo brooch, one of the few family heirlooms she hadn't sold to pay her father's debts. The general store was busy when she arrived, filled with ranchers and townspeople gathering their weekly supplies. Olivia spotted Wade immediately. He stood a head taller than most men present, his broad shoulders easy to pick out in the crowd. He was speaking with the storekeeper, Mr. Dalton, pointing at a list in his hand. Olivia hesitated, suddenly nervous. Her teaching position in town, however brief, had at least been official. What Wade was proposing existed in a gray area that might bring more gossip down on her head. Before she could decide whether to approach him, Wade turned and saw her. A smile broke across his face, transforming his serious expression into something warm that made Olivia's heart beat a little faster. "Miss Evans," he greeted her, crossing the store in a few long strides. "Hope you're doing better than when we last met." "I am, thank you, Mr. Armstrong," Olivia replied, aware of the curious glances from other customers. "I've been considering your offer." And his eyes held a hopeful gleam. "I would like to accept if the offer still stands." Wade's smile widened. "It certainly does. In fact, I've already started clearing out that old bunkhouse. Could use some help getting it ready, though." "I would be happy to assist," Olivia said. "When would you like me to come see it?" "No time like the present," Wade replied. "I've got the wagon loaded with supplies. If you're not otherwise engaged, you could ride back with me today, see the place, meet some of the families. No commitment yet, just come see what you think." The impulsiveness of it went against Olivia's carefully ordered nature, but the prospect of having a purpose again was too tempting to resist. "I'll need to collect some things from my boarding house," she said. "Of course. I'll finish up here and meet you there in, say, half an hour." Olivia nodded and hurried back to Mrs. Jenkins's boarding house, her mind racing with thoughts of what she would need. She packed a small carpet bag with essentials for an overnight stay, though she wasn't sure if that was Wade's intention. "Better to be prepared, Mrs." Jenkins raised an eyebrow when Olivia explained where she was going. Well, moving fast, aren't we? It's a professional arrangement," Olivia insisted, feeling her cheeks warm. "Mr. Armstrong is simply offering me an opportunity to teach." Mrs. Jenkins hummed, clearly unconvinced. "Just be careful, dear. Not about Wade, he's as honorable as they come, but about appearances. This town loves to talk." "I'm well aware," Olivia said dryly, remembering the whispers that had followed her since arriving. Precisely 30 minutes later, a wagon pulled up outside the boarding house. Wade sat on the driver's bench, the back loaded with supplies. He jumped down and approached the door just as Olivia emerged with her carpet bag. "Allow me," he said, taking the bag from her. The drive to the Double, a ranch, took nearly 2 hours, during which Olivia learned more about the man beside her. Wade had come west as a young man of 18, working as a cowhand for various outfits before saving enough to buy his own small spread 12 years ago. Through hard work and smart business sense, he had built it into one of the most successful ranches in the territory. "It's not all been smooth sailing," he admitted, as they crested a hill that revealed the sprawling ranch below. "Had my share of troubles with rustlers, drought, and the occasional land grabber thinking a man without family backing him up would be an easy target." "You never married?" Olivia asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "Forgive me, that's none of my business," Wade chuckled. "No need for forgiveness. No, never found the time or the right woman, I suppose. Been too busy building something that'll last." Olivia could see that he had succeeded. The ranch was impressive, with a large main house built of sturdy logs, several outbuildings, corrals full of horses, and in the distance, the dark shapes of cattle grazing on green pasture. Several smaller cabins were scattered around the property, smoke rising from their chimneys. "Those are where the families live," Wade explained, following her gaze. "Got about 15 children of school age between them. Some of my cowhands have young ones too." As they approached, children playing in front of the cabins spotted the wagon and came running, shouting excitedly. Behind them, women emerged, wiping hands on aprons, their curious gazes fixed on Olivia. Wade pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the main house and jumped down, coming around to help Olivia descend. His hands were strong and warm around her waist as he lifted her effortlessly to the ground. The brief contact left her flustered. "Everyone," Wade called out to the gathering crowd, "this is Miss Evans. She's considering becoming your teacher." The children stared up at her with wide eyes while the adults nodded respectfully. Olivia noted that about half were Mexican families, the rest a mix of white and two black families. It was more diversity than she had seen in the town itself, where segregation was still strictly practiced. A woman stepped forward, extending her hand. "Elena Rodriguez, Señorita. These two troublemakers are my sons, Miguel and Alejandro." She indicated two boys of about 8 and 10 who shuffled their feet shyly. "Pleased to meet you," Olivia said warmly, shaking her hand. Over the next hour, Olivia was introduced to all the families, learning names and ages of the children who might become her pupils. They ranged from 5 to 15, with varying levels of previous education. Some spoke limited English, which would present a challenge, but Olivia had some knowledge of Spanish from her own schooling that would help bridge the gap. Wade showed her the bunkhouse that would serve as the schoolroom. It was larger than she had expected, with high ceilings and windows that let in plenty of light. It needed cleaning and some repairs, but she could see its potential. "What do you think?" Wade asked as they stood in the center of the empty space. "Can you make something of it?" Olivia turned slowly, taking it all in. Already her mind was arranging desks, planning a chalkboard location, considering how to organize different age groups. "Yes," she said with growing excitement. "Yes, I believe I can." Wade's face lit up with a smile that made something flutter in Olivia's chest. "I was hoping you'd say that. When can you start?" "As soon as the room is ready," Olivia replied without hesitation, "though I'll need to return to town for my teaching materials and books." "We can send someone for your things tomorrow," Wade offered. "Tonight, you can stay in the guest room in the main house. My housekeeper, Mrs. Flores, will make sure you're comfortable." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia threw herself into establishing her school, working alongside ranch hands to transform the bunkhouse into a suitable classroom. Wade provided lumber for desks and benches, and to her surprise, ordered a proper chalkboard all the way from Denver. The children proved eager to learn, even those who had never had formal schooling before. Olivia found herself adapting her teaching methods to accommodate their different levels and backgrounds, creating a curriculum that blended practical skills with academic knowledge. Wade often stopped by to observe, leaning against the doorframe with an approving smile as Olivia guided her pupils through their lessons. She found herself looking forward to these visits, her heart quickening whenever she heard his spurs jingling outside the schoolhouse door. She had taken a small cabin as her residence, previously used for storage but cleared out and made comfortable by the ranch hands. It gave her independence while keeping her close to her pupils, many of whom would stop by in the evenings for extra help with their studies. One evening in late October, as Olivia sat on her small porch grading papers, Wade approached with a lantern in hand. The nights were growing cooler, and she had wrapped herself in a shawl against the chill. "Evening, Miss Evans," he greeted her. In the months she'd been at the ranch, he had never dropped the formality of her name, though she had come to think of him simply as Wade. "Good evening, Mr. Armstrong," she replied, setting aside her work. "What brings you out this way?" "Thought you might like to see something," he said with a mysterious smile. "If you're not too busy, that is." Curiosity piqued, Olivia stood. "Lead the way." Wade offered his arm, which she took after only a moment's hesitation. The contact between them, even through layers of clothing, sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. He led her away from the main buildings, following a path that wound up a gentle slope. At the top was a large oak tree, its branches spread wide against the starlit sky. "This is my thinking spot," Wade explained as they reached it. "Best view on the whole ranch." Olivia gasped softly as she looked out. The valley below was bathed in moonlight, the ranch buildings small in the distance, and beyond them, the vast expanse of the territory stretched out like a painting. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Wade nodded, his eyes on her face rather than the view. "I thought you'd appreciate it. You've been working so hard with those kids, I figured you deserved something special." Olivia turned to him, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you for bringing me here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. These past weeks have been, well, they've meant more to me than I can express." "You've done wonders with those children," Wade said sincerely. "Their parents can't stop talking about how much they're learning. Even old Miguel Rodriguez is trying to learn his letters now, says he doesn't want his boys knowing more than him." Olivia laughed, picturing the proud rancher who had initially been skeptical of his sons needing book learning. "I received a letter from the town school board yesterday," she said, the memory dimming her smile. "Apparently, word of our little school has reached Silverado Creek." "They're not pleased," Wade frowned. "What did they say?" "That I'm operating without proper authority and that teaching Mexican and white children together is inappropriate and potentially dangerous to community harmony." Olivia sighed. "They've threatened to report me to the territorial education officials." "Let them," Wade said firmly. "We're not doing anything wrong. These children deserve an education." "I know that, but I worry about causing trouble for you and the ranch." "You've done so much for me, and I couldn't bear it if Olivia," Wade interrupted, using her first name for the first time. The sound of it on his lips made her breath catch. "I invited you here knowing exactly what it might mean. I don't regret it for a second." They stood facing each other in the moonlight, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Olivia was acutely aware of how close he was, of the scent of leather and pine that seemed to cling to him. "I should get back," she said softly, though it was the last thing she wanted. Wade nodded but didn't move. "Olivia, he paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "I want you to know that whatever happens with the school board or anyone else, you have a place here. You've become important to this ranch, to everyone here." The way he looked at her as he said it made her wonder if he meant himself most of all. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've become important to me too." The tension between them was palpable, but Wade simply offered his arm again to escort her back to her cabin. As they walked, Olivia wondered if she had imagined the moment of connection, or if Wade was simply being cautious of her reputation and feelings. 2 days later, trouble arrived in the form of Reverend Phillips and Mayor Simmons from Silverado Creek. They rode into the ranch midday, when Olivia was in the middle of a geography lesson. Wade met them in front of the main house, his stance wary but polite. Olivia dismissed her class for an early lunch when she saw the visitors, instructing the children to go straight home. She smoothed her dress and walked across the yard to where the men stood in tense conversation. "Miss Evans," Mayor Simmons greeted her coldly. "I see the reports were accurate. You have indeed set up an unauthorized school." "There's nothing in territorial law that forbids private education, Mayor Simmons," Olivia replied calmly. "These children weren't being served by the town school. Because their kind aren't welcome there," Reverend Phillips said bluntly. "There's a natural order to things, Miss Evans, one you seem determined to upset." Wade stepped forward, his expression darkening. "I invited Miss Evans to teach these children, Reverend. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with me." "Indeed we shall," Mayor Simmons said. "Armstrong, you've always been tolerated because your ranch brings business to town, but this goes too far. Teaching mixed races together, filling their heads with ideas above their station, it won't stand." "It will on my property," Wade countered. "You have no authority here, Simmons." The mayor's face reddened. "We'll see about that. The territorial governor is a personal friend. I wonder how he'd feel about your Mexican workers when it comes time to renew your land grant." Olivia gasped at the thinly veiled threat. Wade's land grant, the legal document that gave him rights to his property, was essential to his operation. If the governor chose not to renew it, he could lose everything. You would threaten a man's livelihood over children learning their letters. Olivia stepped forward, anger overcoming her usual restraint. "What kind of Christian charity is that, Reverend?" "Don't speak to me of charity, young woman," Reverend Phillips snapped. "You've been living unchaperoned on a bachelor's property for weeks. Your reputation is already beyond salvation." The accusation stung, though Olivia had known such gossip would inevitably follow her decision to teach at the ranch. "That's enough." Wade's voice was dangerously quiet. "You've said your piece. Now I suggest you leave my property before I have you escorted off." Several ranch hands had gathered nearby, their expressions making it clear they would happily carry out such an order. Mayor Simmons straightened his jacket. "This isn't over, Armstrong. You have 1 week to shut down this so-called school, or you'll face the consequences." With that, the two men mounted their horses and rode away, leaving a tense silence in their wake. "I'm so sorry," Olivia said once they were gone. "This is all my fault." Wade turned to her, his expression softening. "No, it isn't. Those men and their narrow minds are the problem, not you." "But your land grant is secure for now," Wade assured her. "Simmons is bluffing. The governor may be his friend, but he's also a businessman who knows the territory needs successful operations like mine." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry about it." But Olivia did worry. That night, she sat in her small cabin, contemplating what to do. The thought of Wade losing his ranch because of her was unbearable. Yet the idea of abandoning her pupils, of letting men like Simmons and Phillips dictate who deserved an education, was equally painful. A knock at her door roused her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Wade standing there, his expression serious. "May I come in?" he asked. It wasn't proper, her being alone with him in her cabin at night, but propriety seemed a distant concern given the day's events. Olivia stepped aside to let him enter. "I've been thinking about what Simmons said," Wade began, pacing the small room. "About your reputation." Olivia's heart sank. "If you think it would be best for me to leave, no," Wade interrupted firmly. "That's the last thing I want." He stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "What I want, what I've wanted for weeks now, is to court you properly." Olivia stared at him, sure she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." Wade stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm saying that I care for you, Olivia. More than I've cared for anyone in a very long time. Maybe ever. But the situation, the school, has nothing to do with how I feel," Wade finished for her. "Though I admit, seeing you fight so passionately for those children only made me admire you more." Olivia felt a warmth spreading through her chest, but caution held her back. "Is this because of what they said, about my reputation? Because I don't need you to offer for me out of some misplaced sense of honor, Wade." "It's not that," Wade said, then reconsidered. "Well, not entirely. I won't lie and say I'm not concerned about how the town treats you, but my feelings started long before today." He took her hands in his. "From the moment I found you crying in that alley, I knew you were special. You didn't belong in that narrow-minded town. You belonged somewhere you could make a difference, be appreciated for who you are." "And where is that?" Olivia asked softly, hardly daring to hope. "Here," Wade said simply. "With me, if you'll have me." The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. Olivia felt years of doubt and insecurity melting away as she looked up at him. "I've never met anyone like you," she admitted. "So principled, so kind. You gave me a chance when no one else would." "Because you're enough, Olivia," Wade said, echoing his words from their first meeting. "More than enough. You're extraordinary." Olivia's heart swelled with emotion. She had come west seeking a new beginning, never expecting to find not just purpose but love as well. "I care for you too," she whispered. "So much." Wade's smile was brilliant in the lamplight. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Olivia responded, her arms sliding around his neck. When they finally parted, both breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because of Simmons or the town gossips, but because I think we could build something wonderful together." "Yes," Olivia replied without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." The wedding took place 2 weeks later in the ranch yard with all the families gathered to witness. Mrs. Jenkins came from town to support Olivia, along with a few other townspeople who had quietly supported her teaching efforts. A traveling preacher Wade knew performed the ceremony, his words about unity and love particularly poignant given the circumstances. Olivia wore a simple white dress Mrs. Flores had helped her make, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Wade looked handsome in a new black suit, his face solemn until the moment they were pronounced man and wife, when his smile broke through like sunshine. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music provided by the Rodriguez brothers on guitar and fiddle, and tables laden with food prepared by the ranch women. Children danced and played, their laughter a testament to the community Wade and Olivia had helped build. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the ranch, Wade pulled Olivia aside for a moment of privacy. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied truthfully. "The school board sent another letter," Wade told her. "Seems they've had a change of heart about our little school." "Oh," Olivia raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "And what prompted this sudden change?" Wade grinned. "Might have something to do with me buying controlling interest in the bank that holds most of their mortgages." Olivia laughed. "Wade Armstrong, that's positively devious." "Just protecting what's important," he said, his expression growing serious. "And nothing's more important to me than you and what we're building here. Not just us, but this whole community." Olivia looked out at the gathering, the diverse families eating and celebrating together, the children playing without regard to background or race, the sense of belonging that permeated everything. "I never would have imagined this when I was crying in that alley," she mused. "I thought my world had ended. Instead, it was just beginning," Wade said, pulling her closer. "Our beginning." As the stars came out over the Double Ranch, Olivia knew she had found not just a husband, but a true partner in creating the kind of world she had always believed was possible, one where everyone, regardless of their background, was given the chance to learn, to grow, and to be enough, exactly as they were.